Welcome to linear inequalities, and this is going to just be a short review on linear inequalities. Specifically, we're going to talk about examples where the sign changes the inequality sign. So what is a linear inequality? It's just a relationship involving less than or equal to, greater than or equal to, less than or greater than, instead of the equal sign, the equality sign. Okay? The important thing to remember is when we talk about solving linear inequalities, you're going to solve them as you would an equation, except for a huge thing here. When you multiply or divide by a negative coefficient, you got to change the sign. Okay, and I didn't write that, but you have to. The exception is when you multiply or divide by a negative, you have to flip the inequality. And the idea is, think about this: if person A weighs 180 pounds and person B weighs 170, and you multiply each by -1, okay, 180 now becomes less than negative 170, so you have to flip the sign. And so see example 1, we're going to look at that right now and see a quick example of what that looks like. Alright, so in example 1, we're solving the inequality. Negative 3x plus 7 is less than 25, and we're solving that for x. So I've rewritten my equation here, and I'm going to solve it as I would an equation. There's two operations here, so this is a two-step equation. So in 2 steps I should be done. We have multiplication and addition. I subtract 7 from both sides. And notice now here I wrote negative 3 in red and the inequality in red, because now that's what we're talking about. You have a negative coefficient in front of this x. Since it's negative, when you simplify, you have to flip the sign. So we divide each side by -3 like we would, but instead of less than, look what happens. The sign changes to greater than. So x is greater than -6. Okay? And so from interval notation, you could also write this as -6 comma infinity. Both those are correct. I would get in the habit of being able to write both of those. So there's that negative coefficient that we said in the beginning, flips the sign when you divide or multiply by a negative coefficient. And you can check and answer. Let's say you left that x is less than -6. You can check a number, and it's going to give you something that doesn't make sense. It's not going to be correct. So be very careful when you multiply or divide by a negative. The other example that we're going to look at is it's one that's really similar to the multi-step equation part 2, where you have the distributive property. So we're going to solve this inequality. 3 times the quantity, 2x plus 4. That's greater than or equal to 10x minus the quantity x minus 6. So I rewrote my inequality, and I have to distribute now. That's the first thing. Distribute, combine like terms. So I distribute the 3 through, and I get 6x plus 12. Right? And the inequality comes down at 10x. Now when you have that minus here, think of taking the opposite of what's in here, the opposite of x minus 6. So the opposite of a positive adding x is subtracting x. The opposite of subtracting 6 is adding 6. In blue here, I wrote that line, combine like terms. No like terms here, so I drop that down. Inequality drops down. 10x minus x is 9x plus 6. And now I have an inequality with variables on both sides, and we solve it just like we would an equation. 6x is the smaller of the x terms, so I subtract that off. I have 12 is greater than or equal to 3x plus 6. Subtract 6, divide by 3, and I get 2 is greater than or equal to x, or you would say it as x is less than or equal to 2. Closed interval. So notice how I have negative infinity parentheses, comma 2, and that's bracketed. Okay? So be very careful when you write your solution. I didn't divide by a negative. The coefficient here was not negative, so I didn't need to flip the sign. So if you guys have any questions or comments on linear inequalities, how to solve them, when to flip the sign, you write it below in the comment box, or you can just email me at nicholas.bennett@dc.gov. Thanks.